Yes.
Okie doke. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Reverend Penelope Emmons. Her nickname is Pepper. She has been a summer resident of Lilydale since the 1990s. She has a master's degree in social work from Temple University and offers counseling, coaching, and mediumship. With retirement, she lives in Atlanta, Georgia, near her family during the winter, and in Lilydale in the summer. She is a 1991 graduate of the School of Healing and Prophecy and a Fellowships of the Spirit Minister. She has been a medium since age 3 and has taught meditation and metaphysical classes, counseling and coaching in a variety of settings. As a volunteer in a homeless shelter and a battered women's shelter, here at Lilydale's workshops, and as well as with a group of elders in Atlanta, Georgia. She is the mother of 3 daughters and 6 grandchildren. She loves to create art, read, teach, and to write. Before Penelope retired, she taught with her husband, Charles, at Gettysburg College and Lilydale. They are co-authors of 2 books that are in our bookstore, Guided by Spirit, Journey into the Mind of the Medium, and Science and Spirit, Exploring the Limits of Consciousness. I would very happily present for you Pepper.
Thank you. Well, when you asked me, Joanne, to give this talk, I hadn't, of course, heard any other ones because it was in June or July. And my very first thought was something that Charlie has a little cartoon of, change is good, you go first. So that was my very first thought about impermanence. Since I've been listening this past month, we've talked about for everything there's a season. We've talked about the monks and how they're able to make these beautiful mandalas and yet have non-attachment and put them into the lake. And I think it's that, thinking about the Buddhist monks, that guided most of my thinking for the last month. My talk is going to start with something called Wu Wei. It's spelled in English W-U-W-E-I. I know of it from Alan Watts, but it's the Taoist principle of non-doing. It's amazing how often I have to continue on with another word, another thought, another whatever. But doing nothing extra is what Wu Wei means. Just noticing, no justification. Have something happen and stand there and take a breath and let it be. The self, my ego self, might want to defend or analyze or react, but if I'm seeing everything as impermanent, I can choose equanimity. All is equal instead of being happy or sad. In equanimity, I can choose to be happier and be unattached to the outcomes of anything I observe or experience. I'm just letting it be. In the Daily Word this week from Unity, they quoted from 2 Corinthians, "We look not at what can be seen, but what cannot be seen. For what can be seen is temporary, what cannot be seen is eternal." That eternalness takes us back to our talks earlier this summer on grace, on how we're in an ocean of grace and oneness and love. But all of us, I've been thinking a lot about Buddhism and so on. And I've been thinking about how we all all of us here chose a karmic formation of coming to Earth at this point. And there's an energy pattern that happens with our choice. It's kind of like in the winter time, the wind comes over Canada, hits the water and picks up moisture, hits New York State and dumps it, all right? This is gonna happen. It's a karmic formation that's gonna happen all the time. So whatever happens to us now is simply because we were born human into a world that has dualism. There's us and them. There's craving, or I want, or I don't want. When there is self, an ego self, there's suffering. It's a constant push-pull when we have a self-reference and we find ourselves separate from the one lesson, which is grace. Grace contains love and kindness and peace and sweetness and compassion, all of those qualities that we're in a whole ocean of. But we get distracted by what we can see. And with that, we have a separate self, but it's an illusion. Pure essence doesn't identify as self. This essence or grace is the macrocosm, and I'm a drop of this ocean of grace. So if I feel anything besides equanimity or grace, it's up to me now to stop, take a breath, and just let it be. Just not add anything extra to the moment. I've been sort of working with this since the beginning of the year, when I had been reading Arthur Brooks' comments, or his little article every week in the Atlantic magazine. And he is a professor at Harvard. He has a course on happiness that caught my attention. And by January, I had a new book written by him and Oprah called How to Build a Life. And that book led to a really wonderful family discussion with grandkids and everybody on what the book had to say and how to do it. And he had 4 steps that I've been working on since January. The first one, he said, is the goal isn't to be happy, it's to be happier. And he's using that word very much like equanimity. It's not a particular attachment to I want. It's my goal is to be happier, to be in that state of equanimity. His second step to build a life is to envision progress. What would that look like in my day? The third one is to set a strategy. You need to choose a couple of situations and imagine engaging in them. And perhaps you'll struggle and fail from time to time, but you're choosing to be kind to yourself when that happens, because you're just in this karmic formation, and it's expected that when something like that happens and you goof, that's your opportunity to become aware and make a new choice. It's a gift. So we're playing this game of life in the human dimension of dualism. But I can remember that I'm in the essence of this ocean of grace, and just step into it. His fourth thing to build a life is get started. Commit. So I picked something that came up. I've been doing a Buddhist class book club for the last 8 weeks. I picked a topic, and then I had to figure out what to do about it. And what I started doing is I found my container of sticky notes, and I write a sticky note each day. Now, there's 365 days in a year, so I have lots of situations to get started on. But I make a commitment. Like one of mine this week was, I observed in myself, I was critical of myself when something was said, and then I judge myself for being critical of myself, all right? So my sticky note today read kind. I am being kind to myself with whatever happens. But we have this life now in a human bodysuit, and we're going to go to another dimension. But the Dalai Lama said things that caught my dad's attention when I told him about it. And even on the last 3 days, as we coached his body how to let go, he reminded me of what I had said, of what the Dalai Lama had said, and I thought it was something interesting. I'm not sure my dad and I got it right anymore, but it was, my dad reminded me that when we leave the earth plane, how we feel at the moment we pass is how we feel when we get to the next dimension. I believe that's true, but we can feel better in the next dimension. But the Dalai Lama said how we feel at the moment we pass is where we will incarnate when we come again to earth. Well, that's quite an assignment, that the peace or the happiness, the equanimity will determine the energy pattern of the next incarnation. We will find ourselves with the same feelings. So I've been, my dad died in 2011, but I've been practicing then, imagining that I'm a rebirth doula, because I gotta practice, because who knows when I pass if I'll be in pain or I'll be in an accident, or luckily maybe I'll be like Ed and just get to go in my sleep. But I don't know which day I'm gonna go, so I wanna be in that state of happiness when I go. It's a great goal, because he said it's the only thing you can take with you is your happiness as you leave. In this book club this summer, we do it on Zoom, and it's been based on a book that's actually been one of the harder books I've ever read. I have to go back and read the chapter over and over. But on page 215 this week, I at the end of the book, but I went back to look for something. And on page 215, the author says, "We die because we are born. We shed 1,000 former selves along the way, from the first day when we are born to the second date when they write our obituary." Well, we had dinner with friends this week, and one of the discussions was basically how many hundreds, if not thousands, of selves we ourselves have been. And the question came up, how old do you feel? And our ages went 14, 17, 30, 50. I was 50. When I thought about it that night, I went, oh my goodness, my kids are 50 to 57. How can I be 50? But it's one of the many selves that I have. And this self now is it. This is now. This is the only moment there is. There was a song that we used to sing with Alan Cohen that went, "Now is the only moment there is. Now is the only time. When you're in love, you move into your heart song." So how do you get into that heart song? And this author describes the Buddha gives you 3 ways. The first one is to still the mind. That's like the Wu Wei. The second is opening the heart. I think that for me, the best practice I've heard of to keep my heart open is when I get in bed before I go to sleep, after Charlie's read to me, as I go to sleep, I think of at least 5 things I'm grateful for. I don't know if I could have a better prayer than gratitude. Then I take a moment and I think of any person or any experience that I've had. And if by chance it was not pleasant, I bring that person into my heart until I have a smile on my face. And if it was pleasant, I take everybody or the experiences with me and have a smile on my face. And I think I'll just stop with that part of that. Because the third thing, so we still our mind, we open our heart, and the last thing was confront our mortality. So I've had 2 near-death experiences, and when I went there, oh my goodness, it was so much better than being here. I didn't want to return. But I was told I had to come back to earth to learn to love. An assignment for all of us, I'm sure. However, because it was so exquisite there, I haven't felt what most people feel when they hear about death. Most of us have been in this karmic formation of this culture. When you hear somebody dies, you go to sad. It doesn't, you go and buy a sympathy card. Even if you're a spiritualist and you know they didn't die, you can still talk to them. I'm not talking about real close situations like a partner, but when we hear about it, we just automatically, most of the time, go to sad. And as I thought about that, one night, a couple weeks ago, I heard about our friend Ed dying. And I went, oh, I'll bet you for him it was like me. It was like, beam me up, Scotty, and hitting this state of bliss, all right? So I couldn't feel sad for him. But I recognized in myself I was not a close friend. I was an acquaintance. I realized in myself, though, that I had a regret that I had told him times what I appreciated about a talk he gave or something, but the week before when I'd seen him at the post office, I hadn't had the consciousness, I was unaware, and I hadn't told him something I appreciated about him, just in seeing him or whatever. And so it gave me a new thing of a mission like Brooks and Making a Happy Life, happier life, of I'm going to make sure that I tell people that are my friends and acquaintances something that I admire in them, that I appreciate from them. I'm going to move forward in a new way out of that lesson rather than have a regret. I think, as I close, I want to share a benediction, which to me has to do with impermanence. I read it at the last Sunday service at Chautauqua this season, and it touched my heart. So I'm going to close this with the same thing. My friends, life is short. We do not have too much time to gladden the hearts of those who travel the way with us. So be swift to love. Make haste to be kind. And the blessings of God, our Creator of grace, will be upon you and remain with you always. And so it is. Thank you.